Direct-to-video sequels are nothing new when it comes to movies. In fact, for a time, some companies like Disney made an entire market of sequels to their popular animated films, and everyone knows just how bad the vast majority of them are. But Disney wasn't the only one to try to capitalize on a popular animated movie with a cheaply made spin-off, as 20th Century Fox did the same thing once the Don Bluth film Anastasia turned out to be a successful hit. Being the only spin-off movie that Don Bluth himself ever worked on, and the only other movie that 20th Century Fox Animation did other than Anastasia and Titan AE, let's talk about Bartok the Magnificent. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. So yeah, there was a direct-to-video spin-off to Anastasia starring the little bat minion from the film, Bartok as the hero. And while the idea of having a spin-off movie about a small side character might put off some people, considering not only the point I made before about Disney and their sequels, but also just how bad some spin-off media can be even today, Bartok's little outing here is a bit different. While clearly having a lower budget compared to its sister movie Anastasia, the style and atmosphere that Bluth was always known for in his films is evident here. Pulling once again from Russia, with this being the third or fourth film at the time that Bluth had used for a backdrop, we start the entire movie with a song informing the audience of the witch Baba Yaga, a Slavic folklore figure known for her magic, iron teeth, and her house with chicken legs. While probably not the first ever cartoon to involve the character, this was my introduction to the Witch of the Iron Forest, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was the first time for a lot of kids back when this came out in the late 90s. But I'll talk about her more when we get to her proper, since there's some interesting points I'm wanting to make when she's more of a thing in the movie itself. We truly start things off by focusing on Bartok entertaining a crowd, talking about his accolades, having fought different mythical creatures and saved towns. While mostly seen to be there for fun and to give the audience some entertainment, we see things are a bit different when Bartok fights a big bear, defeating and capturing him in his little caravan. Not only is he rewarded with a bunch of gold from the audience, but also a royal ring from Prince Ivan Romanov. Don't question the timeline of things here, I'm almost certain it didn't matter to them as far as wanting to make the movie in the first place. Later on, we find out that the bear that Bartok fought against is actually his friend named Zozy, and that both him and Bartok are con men, doing their little fight to get a bit more money out of the local villages. Interestingly enough, Zozy is voiced by Kelsey Grammer, who we saw back in the Troll Hunters video, but I didn't know he also voiced Vlad from Anastasia as well. This is one of the reasons I love making these videos, since I'm able to learn a bunch of interesting things that I didn't know otherwise about movies, TV shows, and more. It makes me wonder if Grammer was just in for another movie with Bluth, or if it was part of his contract that he had to do another one. Either way, the man gives his customary charm to the role, as well as quoting several pieces of literature that I don't think most kids watching this film would have ever heard otherwise.
Once more into the breach, dear friends. Once more, or close the wall up with our English dead.
But we wouldn't have a story here without some conflict, so to get things moving along, Prince Ivan here is kidnapped, with the only clue being an iron tooth left behind by Baba Yaga. Ludmilla, Ivan's assistant and clearly not evil villain, finds the tooth and asks who in the kingdom could save their prince. It's only thanks to two little kids, who couldn't even have smooth animation in the first musical number of the film, that Bartok is recruited and tasked with saving Ivan. This is when we get a song from Grammer's character, all about encouraging Bartok to actually do the job he's been tasked for, instead of simply running away, which the bat had originally planned. I mentioned it for two reasons. The first is because Fraser here actually has quite a decent singing voice, but the other is because I rather like the message it holds about how you can be a hero regardless of how big or strong you are, simply about being there for someone who needs you.
It's more than courage or just being strong. Those things are easy to do. That possible hero in you.
We then get to meet Baba Yaga's Door Skull, played by Tim Curry. It's a bit part, to be honest, but like Grammar, Curry's a voice that you can't help but love, and the entire scene is made more memorable with him. They answer his riddle, get in, and get introduced to the Witch of the Iron Force herself, singing a big band swing song.
No one left or right, but my always all say, someone's in my house tonight.
I honestly love this song. Probably because this is the kind of music I grew up with, thanks to my mother loving songs from groups like Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, but also because it's such a huge departure from anything else that you would have heard in villain songs at the time. That's when the villains had any songs worth mentioning at all. But instead of eating Bartok, Baba Yaga simply tells him that if he wants the prince back, he'll have to go and get 3 different items from her forest. The rest of the movie is him doing just that, first getting Pilaf from the quarry. Oh, I wish it was that Pilaf. It would have made for such an interesting crossover. No, it's a little pink worm thing here that's stuck to a giant rock that Bartok has to get to Baba Yaga's hut. He actually does this with a bit of a pulley system, as well as using an actual kung fu chop, believe it or not. Then he has to deal with Obli the blacksmith, taking his crown before finally getting a magic feather that's flying in the air without him being able to fly himself. And this is all done without any help from Zozie at all. As far as I could find, none of these tasks are actually related at all to Baba Yaga herself, but I could easily be wrong. I'm no expert in folklore as is, and most of the stuff when looking up anything about her doesn't really go too much into detail. The one thing it does go into, however, is what kind of roles that the witch often plays in her stories, of which there are 2 of. The first, of course, is the role of villain, which, considering her description as being an iron-toothed, ugly child eater, it makes a lot of sense. But the second is the role I find the most interesting. The witch is described as having the role of Donner in fairy tales. For those who are unfamiliar with this term, a Donner is someone who's there to help the hero of the story by testing them through a series of trials. That's Baba Yaga's role in this film. She never took the prince or any children by her own admission, but she knew if Bartok was going to actually rescue him, he needed to prove to her and himself that he was capable of doing things on his own. The trials were there to not only test his intelligence and bravery, but his compassion as well when she tells him that he needs to give her something from him personally, which he does with a tear. That's when he learns that the prince was in the tower the entire time. Baba Yaga then sends him off to go rescue the prince, while also gifting him a potion made from the ingredients that Bartok had brought her throughout the entire movie. Turns out, not all that surprisingly, it was Ludmilla who was the real villain all along. She wanted to be in power, and when the prince decided that he wasn't really going to be listening to her anymore, she decided to take action. Though thanks to relying on one of the guards, the prince only gets imprisoned. I actually find it hilarious how blatantly open she is about what she wanted to happen to Ivan, considering this is supposed to be a kid's cartoon.
Dead! Dead is what he could be. Dead!
Dead?
Taking the potion and chugging it down while the tower that held the prince is filled with water, we get the last musical number of the film, starring Ludmilla herself as she transformed into her innermost self, as the potion was designed to do. Turns out that her innermost self is a giant dragon who becomes so animalistic that she attacks everyone indiscriminately. The rest of the movie honestly is the weakest part of it all, since there's not much of a climax here. I'm not sure if they couldn't figure out a good way for Bartok, being the tiny little bat he is, to be able to fight off against a full-size dragon or whatnot, but they made it so that Ludmilla here was little more than a beast in her dragon form, to the point where she is mesmerized by Bartok just juggling a bunch of pebbles. And during all this, Zozie, who's also been pretty much off in the background for the better part of the film, got the prince and his guard free. Ludmilla goes down after Bartok causes her to destroy the tower, using himself as bait, and has the water put out the flames that the dragon caused. I actually laughed at this part rewatching the film because of the sound effect they used for Dragonmilla here, since she sounds like Riptor from the original Killer Instinct game. The ending of the film has Zozie complimenting his friend having saved the day, saying that the power to do so was in him all along, while Baba Yaga congratulates him on his adventure while also saying that they will see each other again. Yeah, that never happens, though I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they expected it, considering how rampant the sequels Land Before Time had. Overall, the reason I wanted to talk about Bartok this week was because despite it being a silly, goofy little cartoon that's a spinoff of a much bigger movie, there's a lot of heart to it. Not only did it feel like a classic fairy tale in many respects, right down to having one of the more well-known folklore characters having a major role in it, the message was solid. The focus on that it doesn't matter if you're small, weak, or even afraid, that you can be a hero. I'm curious though, how many people remember this or even saw it? Do you think it's better than Anastasia? And what was the first time you ever got exposed to Baba Yaga? Regardless, I hope that I've done a good job to entertain you, and I'll do my best to do so again in the future. Hopefully you'll follow along with my content by subscribing and doing all those other things that gives us YouTubers life. If you wish to support me a little bit more, I do have a Patreon that you can get access to bonus content. But until next time, stay frosty.